Hello and welcome to CIBER Focus, your source for international business information. My name is Tim Smith and our guest today is Dr. Rex Stockton. Rex is a Chancellor's Professor in the Department of Counseling and Educational Psychology, an affiliate faculty member in African Studies, as well as a research fellow at the Rural Center for AIDS and STD Prevention at Indiana University. After working at IU for nearly 50 years, Rex has become internationally known for his work in group counseling, group counselor education, and group dynamics. Rex has served as a consultant to a variety of organizations and in presidency roles within the American Counseling Association and American Psychological Association. He is also the former director of the Center for Human Growth at Indiana University. Rex's more recent work involves leading the International Counseling Advocacy, Research, and Education, or ICARE. The ICARE project focuses on counselor training for human service personnel and research related to the social and emotional components of HIV/AIDS in Sub-Saharan Africa. Today, Rex will discuss ICARE, his background in counseling, and the impact counseling research and practice has on social and economic effects of HIV/AIDS. Rex, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Well, to begin with, could you tell us what led you to work in the field of international counseling? How did you transition from growing up on a ranch in New Mexico to working with counselors of HIV/AIDS patients in Sub-Saharan Africa?
Well, first of all, I should say that when I was growing up in a barren area, desert-like area, I was in high school. I picked up a young man who was traveling across the country from England. And he told me about what it was like to come to another country and to go through the country and learn new things. Sounded very interesting to me, even though I never got out of the state or out of the region. So that sort of got me in, that was sort of back in the back of my mind. Then I first got interested in counseling in the United States and practiced for several years before going back to get my doctorate and then becoming a faculty member and then having the opportunities to go overseas and to work with various international organizations. I did that because I was prominent in the life of the organizations that you mentioned. I was a division president of both American Psychological Association and the American Counseling Association. So that gave me the opportunity to meet with people from other countries, and I began to do workshops and go to meetings, and that's how I got involved.
Yeah, that's great. So how about Africa in particular? Why Botswana?
Okay, well that's a good question because I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would wind up in Botswana, Sub-Saharan Africa, period, and Botswana, Africa, too. But I was because as you mentioned earlier, I've had a very good career, a very blessed career, and when I go to conferences, the people like to come around and talk. And I was in Geneva, Switzerland, and the head of the World Health Organization talked about the fact that people like myself were preparing young folks to be counselors for middle-class jobs, and that there were a lot of middle-class problems in the world, including HIV/AIDS and a list of others, but AIDS is stuck out in my mind. And then I was in 2 weeks later, and I thought, yeah, that's right. 2 weeks later, I was in Anaheim, California at the American Counseling Association meeting. And I was at a reception, and people were coming up and saying hello. somebody brought up a young man from Africa, and he said, "Dr. Stockton, I've been wanting to meet you." And I said, "Very nice, nice to meet you." He said, "My name is Dan Bushamani, and I'm from Botswana, but I represent I'm a president of the African Counseling Association, and we want you to come to Africa and work with us." And I said, "Why do you want to know a white guy like me to come to Africa? I don't know your customs." But he said, "Well, we know about you, and we know that you'll treat us with respect. So we'd like you to come and work with us." And so I said, "Okay, I'll think about it." So when I went back, that was in California. When I went back to Bloomington, I applied for and received a peace grant of $25,000, which enabled me to hire a graduate assistant and start briefing myself on Botswana and Sub-Saharan Africa in general, and AIDS in particular. So when I did go over then the next summer, I was briefed to that degree. So I went over, had one workshop, and I thought that was probably going to be it, a one-shot deal. That was 14 years ago.
Thank you, Rex, for walking us through that part of your story. Maybe you could tell us more about the work you're doing with eye care and how counseling in HIV/AIDS affects the regions you work in, and what long-term effects do you expect eye care to have in Sub-Saharan Africa?
Well, first of all, I have to give credit to the people who have perfected the vaccines and make AIDS possible for people to live. Because when I started work, that was not the case, at least not in Africa. The medicine had been just discovered, but it was not widely available. So to go and get tested and find out you have AIDS was a death sentence. Can you imagine what it would be like to just be told, "Well, now you have AIDS, and so go home and prepare your family, talk to your loved ones, and tell them that you won't be here in a couple of years, and you will be dying a rather difficult and expensive death." So naturally, there's a lot of grief involved in that, a lot of anger, a lot of other things. So counseling, that's what we focused on. And nowadays, when the medicine became available, now we focus on the fact that you have a chronic disease that you can get help with, but you have to do certain things. So the counselors today have to know know enough about the body to be able to tell people that they have to keep the drugs. You have to keep a regimen for the drugs, and they also have to be able to eat nutritiously and do something other things to take care of them. In other words, to take care of themselves.
Right.
So there's an information component that is not too traditional in counseling, but applies in AIDS counseling. But beyond that, there's the whole notion of who am I now? I'm diseased. I'm all by myself with this problem, and the social isolation that comes with that is pretty severe. So it's like, who can I talk to? What can I do to find out about myself? And so that's why counseling comes in, and so that's what we train folks to be able to do.
Great, thank you, Rex. People diagnosed with HIV/AIDS face a documented stigma in society. What social problems do those diagnosed deal with, and how can that affect the working ability of adults? How can counseling help those affected by HIV/AIDS still lead productive and happy lives?
It's a tough odor to begin with. People who have AIDS are socially isolated very soon. Now, I'm talking about Africa, which I know more about than I do other countries or other areas, but they get isolated. They're separated from their families very often. And so having that sense of being alienated from society and being alienated from oneself sometimes means that you have much things you need to work on. And counseling can do that and does that. It provides a listening ear and provides the kind of information that's important for people to have. And it also provides a way for them to resolve the issues that they're with. And then AIDS has such a social and economic, emotional and economic impact on any society. The current you can have it up to 20%, which is pretty high, very high. You talk about 1 out of every 5 people, but that can be very prevalent in southern Africa, particularly in Botswana, Lesotho, South Africa. That's all sort of a mix in there. So the social, the emotional, and the economic impact is huge.
Thank you, Rex. You've undoubtedly seen many changes here at Indiana University, one of which is its international landscape. What processes help drive international efforts within higher education, and what can universities in the U.S. do to further tap into international opportunities?
Well, let me just say that I think IU is doing very well with that.
Great, and I agree, but we're not done yet.
Right. So in fact, you have responded to the challenge very well, the Kelley School and IU in general, because we do, as a university, have responded to the international challenge by having faculty contacts throughout the world. And I think that's really what's important. And as you identify problems and you have expertise that you can help with the problem, then you're able to extend the university's influence. After all, universities are designed to develop knowledge and to hold it, but also to provide it. And we're in a shrinking world, and so it's very possible and important that universities spread what they know in terms of scientific developments and other developments that are relevant in terms of business practices, say, for instance. So universities are very good at that, I think, in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great challenge for us to all remember as we continue to move forward and lead positive change on the global stage. Rex, I want to thank you so much for coming in and joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
That's all the time we have for this edition of CIBER Focus. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any comments or suggestions for future topics, please let us know at CIBER, that's CIBER, @indiana.edu.